All right, Hank and Jerry's adventures continue. Um, and you had sent a nice document that said, why don't we sort of compare notes on how Aikido um, connects into, or I forgot even exactly how you said it, but you said it very nicely. Uh,
How Aikido resonates with the things that you would like to do, and especially if we use the Upkido site, give the Upkido a new charge of ki, of energy.
yes, yes, lovely. Shall we start with ki or chi?
Yeah, sure.
I think that's a great idea. Um, and so well, let's just start by taking apart Aikido. Uh, Aikido is I is harmony, ki is energy or human life energy, and do is the way or the path.
Yeah,
And Aikido is therefore meant to mean the path of harmony with universal life energy, which
yeah,
is a lovely aspirational thing. If you talk to people like my sensei, who cares about the history and has sort of tracked Morihei Ueshiba in his early days when he was training the Imperial Japanese Army to kill people in Manchuria, you will realize that there was a darker part to the origins of Aikido. But I think at some point, O Sensei, after the war, it's like, ah, man, we have to use this thing for peace. And so that's what the best heart of Aikido has become a thing that's very much about neutralizing combat or conflict, saving the life of your opponent, and otherwise using this key energy to do so. And so sorry, I took a tour around a little bit to come back to ki or chi. But the key in Aikido is the same key as Tai Chi, is the same key as several other practices that are concerned about universal life force or energy. So it's a very common thing, in particular across Asian belief systems.
absolutely. Um, I have a number of books for many years because I haven't practiced Aikido since the 80s, and then even then only practiced for 5 years. So I would not say that I know all that much of it, but it has totally changed, had totally changed my life in those days, and things I learned doing Aikido, I still try to use my life, I organize my life around them. So one of the Aikido books which presented itself to me,
Mhm.
and this is a beautiful book. Can you see it clearly?
Yeah, it was flashing in and out, but the problem is you're blurring your background, so it's looking only for your head. But I know
Yeah.
I've seen it, The Art of Peace.
It's a wonderful book. It's got a short biography of Oshiba Sensei, and it then has, well, I guess I can't show it too well. It's filled up with his own calligraphy and his sayings and poems about
Mm.
Aikido,
Hmm.
the art of peace. And there are, of course, references in the biography to how he felt when he was a soldier in the Manchurian invasion, and he, at least according to that biography, he never was engaged in active combat, and he definitely changed completely after the war and
Hmm.
decided that the best way to cultivate Aikido among other people was also to cultivate a garden, which he did. And I put a number of quotes and references to his work in that document I uploaded. And there's a lot more that really talks about harmony, peace, uh, looking at your opponent, instantly able to read his or her mind and being able to uh, defeat them without any battle, uh,
Hmm.
which I think is a wonderful thing that people all over the world should aspire to. And
Yeah.
how what we've been talking about the last couple of times can relate to that. I think it's up to us to see what emerges in this and several of the future conversations. I do think the principles which he is cited as using reconciliation, harmony, cooperation, empathy, and he's quoted as saying these can be applied bravely to all the challenges we face in life. Uh, I think that's worth cultivating a bit until uh, the message for us and the rest of the world emerges in the rather long quote of 5 lines somewhere near the top of the first page. He
Hmm.
explains, and I'll just read it out loud for the recording. In reality, Aikido has no forms, no set patterns. It is like an invisible wave of energy. However, such a phenomena is too difficult for human beings to grasp, so we do use provisional forms to explain it and put it into practice. Any movement, in fact, can become an Aikido technique. So, in ultimate terms, you can make no mistakes. And my advice to you, learn and forget, and make the techniques part of your life.
Hmm.
And if I had to formulate a type of legacy message I'd like to leave for people, it'd be probably something like that. If you're acting on your deep intuition based on harmony, cooperation, empathy, you can't make a mistake. But you have to, of course, know that's your path in life. I also quote him saying everyone needs to find a path for themselves and make it their own path and live with creative courage. And I think that's lots of good stuff, which in one way or another, I'd like to help share with people.
I'd love that. Um, is this the right place or the wrong place for a little bit of a critique of that paragraph?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, right place.
So it's interesting because I've not done a lot of martial arts. I've only done a couple, but I find Aikido to be quite formalized. And this is probably just the particular school of it that I go to, but I go to an Aikikai branch, Aikido, which is the main branch of Aikido. There's Bidenkai, there's a bunch of other, there's Ki Aikido where you hardly touch the other person and it's all about the ki and it seems completely weird and fake. There's a bunch of different sort of schools of Aikido, but the one I come from seems like it's pretty connected to the main line. And we have kind of a series of ritualized attacks, ritualized ways of receiving the attacks, and ritualized throws. And the thing I'll say is, but my favorite teacher, our senior sensei at the dojo, Ty Barker, has studied a whole bunch of other arts, including knife fighting. He's got guns at home and stuff. He's really good he's taken knife arts from James Keating, who is a master like knife fighter, and he's done dos pares, which is esgrima, which is the two sticks from Philippines, and then what he'll do for us is he'll combine those all and he'll bring them back into Aikido. But what's really interesting is Aikido is almost like a waltz. It's very rhythmic. And all of a sudden, he'll do something that's out of some other art, where he does a triple tap in the time that we would be waiting for the next thing. And it basically upsets us every time. We're like, we're not ready for that. And so there's kind of this balletic rhythmic beauty to Aikido that isn't necessarily hugely practical as a martial art. And when you compare it against other martial arts that are far more lethal, brutal, and do a lot of things that you'd never do in Aikido, like You'd never take your elbow and whack somebody's muscle or bone into it with the intent of destroying their muscle or bone. You would blend with them and throw them to the ground and then pin them in a way that's kind of harmless. But if they twist a lot, they're going to dislocate their shoulder. That's the worst thing that's probably going to happen, right? So it's very interesting in the sense that the language around our throws and pins is also quite set now. So call it anything you want, whatever it is. But I will say that I agree entirely with the value of the paragraph, which is you do a lot of stuff over and over again because it's only through the repetition that you start to soak things into your body. So you begin to get autonomous responses, and who gives a damn what the name of the throw is? But when you find yourself in this situation, you're like, oh, from here I can do these 5 different throws. And it kind of depends on which way Uke, my partner, usually you have Nage and Uke are the two people sort of fighting. Uke is the attacker who gets thrown and then takes Ukemi, which is how you break your fall. And Nage is the person being attacked who does the throw or the pin. And so, depending which way Uke is leaning or their weight is or whatever else, you might do one of the different options, but you start to internalize very nicely what's possible at this kind of situation. And you start to see familiar situations. You're like, I'm in a place I know really, really well, and I have a lot of options right now, which is a terrific feeling. You also get, and I think one of the terms that you have is ma'ai or ma, which is basically the distance between uke and nage. And you also get a sense of if somebody tried to punch you from this far away, you could just block them. And they can try as hard as they want. They can like really come at you and even like try to surprise you unless they really catch you by surprise. You have enough time to do this. And it's like it's kind of soothing to know that. And then a last thing I'll say for this little critique kind of is that one of the facts of having some of this in your body and some of the reflexes and knowing the distance and all of that is that you can calm down a little bit when you're in the middle of what looks like heavy action. And that's a priceless gift, I think, of learning a martial art, is that when you start to understand pieces of it and you get into it, you can be calmer in the action and you don't have to freak out or react, all of that. And sorry, I'll add one more thing before I finish this, but you also know that if you hit somebody a couple levels above you, you're dust. Like you're not going to survive for very long. Because if somebody a couple levels above you knows what they're doing, you will be neutralized and out of action pretty quickly. Anyway, that's a whole lot of stuff on it. But my experience of Aikido has been much more formal and ritualized than the sentence was. It's like, who cares what the names are? Call it whatever you want. I'm like, I don't experience that on the mat. But I can see how that would be part of the philosophy.
Yeah, what I really liked was the sentence where he said, "Such a phenomenon is too difficult for human beings to grasp, so we use provisional forms to explain it and put it into practice."
Yeah.
My Aikido experience in the Netherlands was not learning the names of techniques, but practicing them. And we didn't call them kata, but kata is a good Japanese word for a sort of formalized protocol of what you do. And my experience is very much like you were describing. I sometimes call that the 10,000 strokes or the 10,000 repetitions of alchemy. Uh,
Hmm.
we would do something hundreds of times, thousands of times across weeks and months, and suddenly you understand what you're doing.
Hmm.
You can't be told what you're doing, but you can learn to understand it.
Yeah. It's a very sensory physical thing. You can't kind of like you can't talk somebody into riding a bicycle properly. They've got to get on a bicycle and figure out, oh, wait a minute,
Yeah,
right? Same
exactly.
sort of thing. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, yeah, no. And one of the things I put at the end of the document, with my own editions, where I'm not citing The Art of Peace, uh, we learned right from the beginning that you've got to match your partner. So if you're stronger than your partner, you lose. If you're faster than your partner, you lose. If you're bigger than your partner, you lose. If you use too much force, you lose.
Hmm.
But if you match with your partner, which might mean that someone with a green or brown belt is practicing with someone with a white belt, or a small guy like myself is practicing with a big, tall Dutchman, or a woman is practicing with the same big, strong Dutchman, the only way you learn to do the techniques is if you can match. And I thought that was a terrific life lesson, and I try to use that wherever I can think of it every time since then.
Yeah, thank you. Our two top senseis are very bashful about putting their videos on. Sorry, I've got a little cough. Um, and one of the explanations I get is that it's very hard to communicate the pressure or the grip or the sensation of the throw. And so they're like, not so sure about videos. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can understand that perfectly. Um, what I also really liked was what one of the we had well, I had two Aikido courses, one which I went to all the time, with the Dutch Aikido Association, and another club in a different city. And from the Aikido Association, we had 3 or 4 times a year a sensei from Japan who came over and uh, practiced with us and showed us more involved things to do. And one of the senseis said that the essence of Aikido has nothing to do with fighting, but it has to do with being aware of what a situation is. So someone in the room said, "Well, what do you do if you're attacked?" He said, "That's a very good question. The first principle of Aikido is to not be able to put yourself in a situation where you might be attacked. The second is, if you think you're going to be attacked, run away as fast as possible. And only if you're cornered and there's no other way out, then you can use some of the techniques." And I thought
Hmm.
that's another great life lesson.
It's interesting. There's a lot of nice life-saving, pacifying, calming kind of aspects to it. They teach Aikido arm locks to police because they're a good way to sort of neutralize people and hold them well so you can talk to them. Although police aren't doing much of that anymore. Somehow in American policing, we've ratcheted up the violence enormously to the point where unarmed contact is rare and maybe strange. I don't know. It's a little frightening what's happened to policing because this is actually really good for policing because you can disarm knife holders or whatever else. There's a whole lot of good mechanics and mechanisms here. We don't tend to talk about the regular throws and pin techniques as kata. When we talk about kata, mostly it's with the weapons. Aikido has three weapons. There's a long stick called a jo. There's a fake katana or sword called a bokken, and there's a fake dagger called tanto. And we do like bokken and jo katas, which are routines that were invented. There's one of the famous Aikido masters is Chiba Sensei, and there's a Chiba Sensei's Sancho One kata, which took us at least 1 or 2 summers of the pandemic to learn. It's not that long. You can execute the whole thing in under a minute. But that is a routine for two people where you know what you're going to do next, but when you do it well, you pretend like you don't know what's coming next. And so, if you do it well, there's quite a bit of contact of the Joes, and I love it. It's a beautiful routine. But that's very definitely a kata or a routine where we did not think about the normal throws and stuff like that as kata. That's somehow not a term we used for them regularly.
Yeah, we practiced with the bokan, not every week, but several times a month, maybe once a month with the O, but we never had the dagger. Yeah, so I mean, we could talk a lot more about Aikido, but what interested me in doing this is you've got Upkido, and maybe you should tell a little more about how you see Upkido as being a practice place for what you want people to practice. And then we can see if there are any calligraphies or poems or quotations or whatever, which might be relevant both to Aikido and to Upkido.
That sounds great. Thank you. It's interesting because Upketo is meant to be, it's just a thought experiment of a practice that means improving everything you touch. But the conceit of blending or creating, coining a new term, Upketo, of blending upward spiral or uplift with Aikido, is of using some of the principles of Aikido we've just been talking about. And in particular, the idea of noticing the forces that are present, which you were just talking about. And I love that um, because when you're in any situation, in your life, there's lots of different things happening. And then the more you can kind of understand and perceive what they are, the more you can often avoid trouble, the more you can maybe find solutions to things, the more repertoire you have to react and respond. Um, Instead of quickly classifying a situation as being exactly this and then responding in the one way you've been trained to do the thing, that sometimes will work but often will fail. And so in Upketo, and Upketo as a practice is meant to apply when you're on the playground, when you're at work and hitting a conflict, when you're being assaulted on the street, maybe stereotypically perhaps, when you're trying to figure out what your organization's strategy should be in the face of a pandemic. All these, it's setting independent. It doesn't care what setting, which means that in every setting you need to start to perceive and understand what the forces are. And I think that's a huge part of it. And then the magic is, how do you blend with the forces? It's funny. Our dojo is, we do Aikido and we also do Kenpo and we also do Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, which is the precursor art to Aikido. O Sensei, the founder of Aikido, was first doing Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, this other thing, which we have one guy who's like pretty many belts up, and he teaches after us. But I did a couple of Kenpo classes, which is an American martial art that is almost the exact opposite of Aikido, where somebody strikes you, where in Aikido you would grab it and then bend it and move around with their energy, using their energy sort of against them. In Kenpo, you block and then you thrust your elbow in their face, or you whatever else. There's a whole series of katas actually you have to memorize for Kenpo. And I stopped doing Kenpo. I just stopped. I couldn't go to any more classes because it was so opposite that I didn't like it. It was philosophically sort of harshing my vibe, so to speak. I wanted that calming blending piece. So if I bring that back in to talk about forces at play, then the question is, okay, so this person's angry. One of my favorite people to listen to about sort of this kind of relationship stuff is Chris Voth. Have you read any Chris Voth or watched any of his videos? He's the former
No,
FBI and Interpol hostage negotiator.
yeah.
VOSS. He's very good, and he does these YouTube shorts that are really quite good. And he'll have somebody who's annoying him at a dinner party who barges in and does something, and one of his tricks is like, "Hi, I'm Chris." And the moment you've introduced your name into an altercation, which the other person didn't do, they just came in and they're trying to be mean. But the moment you say your name and you say it in a soft way, you've just changed the setting a little bit, right? And he has a million things sort of like that to consider in settings where you're dealing with someone in some kind of conflict. And I like them. I think he has a lot of great lessons there. So maybe he would be an Upkido teacher for interpersonal conflict, because he's gifted at noticing the thing that's going to cause people to do it. One of the things that I love about his book, I'm forgetting the title of his book, I'll find it in a second, was that no is sometimes the start of your negotiation. When you get your opponent, your partner in the negotiation, when you get the other person to say no about something that you're proposing, or whatever, they have the new sense of agency. It gives them a bit of confidence and some grounding, and they're more likely to come back into the conversation and negotiate better, or whatever else. So a whole series of insights like that, and maybe the thing to do is also to try to identify various and sundry Upkido master teachers from their own disciplines and include them in like the syllabus or on the website as people to learn from. And an exercise we might do down the road is blend those things and say, oh, I borrowed these 5 things from this person and these 3 things from this other person, and here's how they seem to work and what they seem to do. I think that would be super interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Was his name Chris Voss?
Yes.
V-O-S? Okay,
VOSS. I will send you a link to him in my brain.
excellent.
And he's got a Wikipedia page, et cetera, et cetera. But here he is in my brain.
Ah, terrific.
And I have unfortunately put a lot of his videos into my brain. It is packed. Let me just do this for the screen cap, so anybody can see. So here's Chris Voth in my brain. Every one of these little red icon things is a YouTube, mostly a YouTube short, sometimes more. Uh, but he's telling a whole bunch of how to respond to a take it or leave it offer, use no-oriented questions, mirror their offer, gentle labels, and use generosity. Never be mean to somebody who could hurt you by doing nothing, is one of his bylines. So that sounds like wisdom to me, right? And then
Very
I
good.
also I also want to point to, this is scrolling back in our conversation, but I was looking at this spot in my brain earlier, which is some of the terms that we haven't talked about, like randori, or in particular, one I really like is onegai shimasu. And let me just say this real quick. Whenever in Aikido we start class, and also whenever you partner up with your partner and you stand up to do something with them, we always say onegai shimasu. And after finishing with them, we say thank you or domo arigato. But onegai shimasu is this lovely phrase, do me this favor. And it's basically you're inviting them to practice with you. And I really like it. I love onegai shimasu a lot.
Very, very nice. Yeah, we didn't practice things like that. It sounds really beautiful. But what we did is we started each lesson and ended each lesson with 5 to 7 minutes of sitting Zen.
Oh, wow. Zazen.
Empty your mind, whatever was uh, interesting for you when you enter the dojo, leave that at the door, and let's just practice Zazen for a few moments until we're all ready to focus on what we're going to do here. Yeah,
That's very nice.
I liked your suggestion of a few moments ago to look for people who would be interesting teachers of Upkido and
Hmm.
first try to understand a number of their principles and values, and maybe even inviting uh, practitioners of those values or the teachers themselves to join us. Yeah, excellent idea.
Thank you. Agreed. Um, oh, yeah. So I'm going to add to my brain sort of Aikido practitioners, even though they might not know it.
Yeah,
And I'll attach Chris Voss to that list and we can go from there.
yeah, excellent.
But it's interesting because Voss was trying to get hostages out alive. That was his goal functionally at work. Um, and his failure meant that somebody had died, right? If he was on one of these negotiations and it didn't go right, it meant somebody had probably died. High stakes, but his goal was always to diffuse the situation and get people out safely.
Yeah,
That's interesting, and you don't want to treat your whole life as if it's one long hostage negotiation, certainly. But I think what he learned from doing that extreme situation over and over again was some things that are practical for everyday life, which I like.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting.
So, what would be appropriate to start putting into an Upkido website that you can stimulate the interest or creativity of people reading it to add things of their own?
Um, Great question. And then we haven't sort of sat down and looked at the website together ourselves much. So we kind of face that question right now. And there's a piece of me that wants to create something that lets people just go start reporting back on their uses of Upketo, even though we don't have certification or a belt system or training or anything like that. We have just sort of fledgling ideas of what this is. I think that a practice can emerge from considered conversation around what people are doing who get the idea and just go out and do something. So it'd be nice to have a place on the site where we can ask people to go try this out and report back. They could record a short video, they could do a blog post, they whatever the usual means of communication might be. Although I'm not a big, very fond of TikToks, but still, but it could be anything like that, right? And that would be an interesting resource for me because I think that we will only learn this in the doing. Now, I've been working on the principles of Aikido, which it turns out link directly to the principles of design from trust, which is something I've been working on for a while. And we can go there if we want to sort of wade around in the weeds a bit. Um, but that's another thing that I think should be kind of up on the site. It's like, well, so what are our operating principles? What do we think? What do we think if we try to express in as few words as possible these concepts? What are those words? And you?
To relate what you just said to what we were talking about last week, the idea of what if scenarios of a kind of future we like to live in. They could be done very nicely, of course, with the design for trust principles and also with the principles of Aikido. And I'm hoping that later in this conversation or the other September conversations, we can combine uh, those two, the what if scenarios, some speculative and some real life examples, with principles of design for trust or from trust and principles of Upkido, which my spelling checker always keeps making upside. And
You need
perhaps
to
that's,
add it to your local dictionary.
yeah, yeah, no, no, but I'm just thinking upside is probably a very coherent image.
Yeah, yeah.
And we could do it intuitively, and we could do it forced to fit just to see what comes out of it. And we could do it with a third or a fourth person working with us.
Hmm.
My feeling, my intuition is that there's something in this which, if it unfolds in the right way or emerges in a coherent way, is a wonderful addition to things that can help people improve the world.
That's the goal.
I would like to work towards, if you have the time and energy for it, amongst all the other things you're doing, to maybe using the last of the sessions in September, or the last two of them, to actually practice. Well, suppose we wanted to use two principles of design from trust, one indigenous wisdom principle, and one Donella Meadows leverage point. Uh, what would that be like?
So um, I think those are ambitious goals, and I mean that both in a wow and in a oh kind of way. In the sense of, I hear Donella Meadows' points of leverage in a system mentioned often. Same thing with Lynn Ostrom's points for creating sustainable commons, mentioned often. I almost never hear someone say, "Oh, we were using number seven, and this is how." Nobody ever, in my experience from my little world, goes to that level of detail. Because why? Like somehow the broad idea of the frameworks has made its way into us, into our psyche, but not the details of it. And to ask somebody to use a particular level of Donella Meadows framework means they have to be a systems thinker and then know what systems thinking is, because those are all ways you intervene in systems design, which means they're thinking about a big part of a big problem, right? Now, some of the lower levels of Meadows framework, um, I'll just find it. Some of the lower levels of the framework are more practical, um, right? So, number 11, the size of buffers and other stabilizing stocks relative to their flows. Number 12, constants, parameters, numbers, such as subsidies, taxes, and standards. And there are 12 leverage points. So that's the bottom. The top most abstract one is the power to transcend paradigms, right? I'll just point to, oops, I shared the wrong screen. Let's try that again. Let's share the right screen. There we go. So here are the 12 leverage points. And again, I don't hear people referring to particular ones, although I know that, if you're busy in a company messing around with incentive systems and constraints and stuff like that, you'd be working in level 5 of the Meadows model, but we don't talk about it that way, right? Then I
Yeah,
just realized by accidentally going to number 5 that my whole thing about rethinking constraints needs to be under that. Because I'm working off this trope a lot, but I haven't thought about it as being one of the leverage points, right? So I got to go do some homework on that. Um, so I'm wondering, for homework or for helping people start somewhere on using Upkido, there's a couple things that are brutally simple, because in some senses, putting a smile on the cashier's face is Upkido.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Free hugs. Free hugs is absolutely Upkido. Um, Helping somebody imagine or do something, helping somebody paint a fence, clean their house, trim their yard is Upkido, because you're improving the space, the place, and you're helping somebody. Those are all very Upkido. Um, and I'm realizing here that I've been working a little bit with Amidar, the founder of idealist.org. And he just created something called Idealist Day, which is, 1/1 is January 1st, 2/2 is February 2nd, because you can't confuse the day on if the day and the month number are the same. It's the same if you're in Europe or in the US or in South America or wherever. So he's saying on those days, let's get together for breakfast and do something. And I would love for Upkido to be a principle for how to go about doing something. That'd be great, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to find things that are simple enough. And in some sense, this is a little bit like do-gooder acts. But in another sense, in this, I started writing about improve everything you touch. This got interesting really quickly, which may be a bad thing. Improve is a very weird word. Improve everything you touch is, I think, a very nice goal. It's the simplest phrase I could find to explain Upkido. Great. What I think is an improvement to your situation, condition, or system may not sound like an improvement to you. And never mind, once we've made the improvement, it may have side effects on people we haven't thought about or considered that would not be very happy about the thing we're about to do. So, how do you take those things into account without freezing everything you might try to do, but being kind of humble about your reach in what you try, but ambitious in what you do? I think that's a really, it immediately brings that in focus. It's like, what do you mean improve, right? And I think the improve is well, and I've seen way too many well-intentioned people doing things that are damaging to other people. That is epidemic across the world. There are people who think they're doing good, they're applying something or system, and they're actually hurting the people that they're trying to help in whatever way. Sometimes it's short-term shipping of grains into a disaster relief area kills off the farmers in that area because now no farmer has a market for any of their grain because there's too much foreign grain coming in for free. And all of a sudden, farming gets hurt, and all of a sudden, the long-term viability of this area in severe distress is threatened. What do you do? So there's a whole series of people who focus on disaster relief and how do we make it so that people in some highly affected place, whether by hurricane or war or whatever, actually can recover and don't need help a short while later. That's really important. But that's, I think, a higher, that's an acute version of this. What do you mean by improve question, right? But in your personal level, sometimes all it takes is asking, "Hey, Hank, if you and I wrote a blog post together, would that be good for both of us?" And we're like, "Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, good." So we agree to do that, and then we go do that, and we post it, and we're happy. That's very simple. And the most the blog post will likely do is influence a couple people and whatever. But as long as it's not hate speech we've agreed to write, I think we're doing okay.
Well, listening to that, I kept thinking of the Tao or the Tao,
Hmm.
in which choosing to do something is a choice and choosing to do nothing is a choice. And if you do things with the right intention, you can't know what the effect is. But if you don't do things with the wrong intent, I got gobbled up there. If you choose not to do things uh, and you leave the field open for others to do other things, that's also a choice. And you can have that on your conscience at the heavenly gate when you arrive also. So it's always a point where you have to choose. So in my own life, I try to choose ways that feel right from out an intuition or an inner core or resonate with the ki or chi. But you never know. So
Agreed.
do we choose the blind leading the blind, or do we let others choose for us?
Or in the process of trying to help, do we remain permeable and alert to second order effects, to complaints, to whatever? And sometimes the complaints are from people who caused the problem in the first place because they're going to complain. If you fix something that's about land rights or land ownership or some other sort of thing, some people who had the benefits of the broken system are going to complain. So if the shift is actually better overall, and I am no philosopher, and I'm afraid of what some of my philosopher friends would say about this because there's so many different concepts of what is good, uh, pragmatist and other and idealist and other kinds of approaches to how do you measure benefit for society or for whatever. And I don't want keto to get lost in that, angels on the head of a pin kind of digression. I think that just being aware and responsive is good.
Yeah. Nicely put.
And it's so easy to go down these philosophical rabbit holes, and they're everywhere. I mean, if you start talking about generative AI and is it conscious or intelligent, either one of those, right? Never mind when will it be super intelligent or AGI or whatever. But even just those terms, I thought, wow. A funny counterexample. Years ago, like around 2016, I had an ongoing debate with a couple of friends, a couple who were friends of ours, that Trump was intelligent. I said, he's smarter than most people think he is. And there was no synonym of smart that I could use that would make sense to them. They were like, nope, nope, won't buy it,
Yeah.
can't have it, nope, nope, nope. And I was like, I don't know how to express this to you, but I think he's not as stupid or as thin-skinned as most people say. And I think just while I've got the whale on the table, I think Upkido strategies as resistance to the Trumpocalypse are very interesting. I think that we have a moment in society where a whole mess of people are feeling ignored, forgotten, left behind, trampled, whatever. And then a whole bunch of other people, a smaller group of other people, are busy like, oh, we can fix that. Look, we'll just create an autocratic state. We're at that moment where intervening in smart ways, I think, is mandatory. So sometimes the interventions maybe are very, 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 very tiny. A
And
story,
and
a story,
sometimes they must be bold.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's
A,
both.
sto- a story I tell sometimes is my first job in the world was at Mobil Oil before it was ExxonMobil, so a very long time ago. And I was a junior clerk in the transportation division doing something that has been successfully automated. And one day I go to the restroom, and just finishing up is a guy named Michael Hage, who was a young and up and coming executive. He was tall, thin, in a suit because we all wore suits to the office then. Um, and he's washing his hands, and I walk in, and we do not exchange a syllable. He takes his paper towel, dries his hands, and then cleans off the counter before throwing away his paper towel. That's all that happens. And then he leaves the bathroom. And I think to myself, if he were to ask me to work on a project for him, I'd lean in because he
Yeah.
cleaned up after himself in the bathroom. And there's another saying, how you do everything, how you do something is how you do everything. I think that's
Yeah.
it.
Something like that. Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah. 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 For years, I liked the quote, and it was attributed to Nietzsche, but I've never really checked it on a check your quote site, where he said, it's important to be a generalist, but if you can't do one thing very well, you can't do anything very well. So make
Mm,
certain, even if you're a generalist, that there's one thing that you can do very well, and then you can do everything. It's a nice quote. Well, it's
I
paraphrased
like that.
as I tell it, but it's nice to
This kind of goes along with the Steve Jobs quote.
thought 100 years before that, but
Yeah, exactly. I know. George Leonard, Socrates, maybe.
Hmm?
I'll look it up afterward.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because I don't know if you have to go at the top of the hour. I
I
just
can stay a little after.
put something else now into the chat, which I
Hmm.
think is worth considering for a few moments, is what is it that we and you want to do? Because it could be simply inspiring people with giving them a sense of opportunity that it is possible to co-create positive futures, or it could be more in terms of supporting learning, helping people learn to apply, or it could be in helping people go out and look for real life examples of things that don't usually get talked about,
Hmm.
and any other number of things, but that's something to try to think about as well.
You're reminding me that I'm right now writing a blog post about my theory of change. Like, how do I think systems change?
Yeah,
And I'm not done with it, but one of my beliefs is that one of the strongest movers of social change is someone taking someone else by the hand to try something new.
Oh yeah, very
That,
nice.
that's it. It's just somebody kind of like you, a friend and acquaintance. So there's no need for an introduction, but you say, "Hey, come try this." And the example I give is a long time ago, I worked at New Science Associates, and I had just broken up with a girlfriend. And our IT guy Frank said, "Hey, Jerry, you're looking kind of blue. The missus and the kids and I have been attending Quaker meeting. Would you like to join us on Sunday?" And I had never ever heard of Quaker meeting, had no idea what it was. But he was a good friend, and we had been social a bit with families and stuff like that and other people. So I'm like, sure. So I show up on Sunday before they do. I remember the handshake I got from the greeter at the door, John Lee, and I stayed at the meeting more longer and more often than they did. It was like a complete eye opener thing for me to understand Quaker meeting. But I would not have gone from a flyer. I would likely not have gone even reading a great article about it. Maybe, don't know, don't know. But a friend saying, "Hey, we're going on Sunday, join us." Done.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think so. Let me glue that back to what Aikido practitioners could do. Take someone by the hand to try something new.
Yeah.
And it might be something disagreeable to them. It might not even be something they stick with in the long run. But we are starved for sort of novel ways of seeing the world and doing things. So I think just helping people experience something new is good,
Totally.
as long as you don't take them to go hunt elephant or something like that. It's probably a bad thing. Hey, come, we're going to go wild game hunting.
Yeah.
We'll have pictures on the internet of us and big animals dead at our feet.
Yeah, nice.
But for me, like very tiny things done often by a lot of people add up pretty quickly. Um, So how do we get people to tell us stories about that? And to tell us stories that have their own legs, that we could create a YouTube channel or a hashtag. Back in the day, we would have created a hashtag and asked for people to do this on Twitter, and it would have been something. Twitter is a vast wasteland now, it's X. And so I don't have any heart for saying, let's try to get a hashtag going on X. That sounds miserable. Its replacements haven't really worked. So I don't have another place that I go to get what I used to get on Twitter, which is sad. But I'd be interested in a cycle where we offer or ask people to share their stories like this and see where that goes.
I like that. And it reminds me of a wonderful piece of wisdom I learned from a colleague back in the days when we were actively supporting and running future centers. I've always liked the quote from the film, "Build the field, they will come."
If you build it, they will come.
He said something more powerful: if it works, it will build itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
So now I use both, but I always think of Paul's advice. Uh, if it really works, it'll build itself.
How do we apply that to Upkido?
The thing that came into my mind when I thought of saying that is that you start with a small group of people who you think would benefit from this or like to do it. And if they do like to do it, they'll invite people from their network and their friends to do it. And if it's if it seems to work, if it gives people the feeling that they're doing something or learning something which is valuable to them,
Hmm.
it'll build itself. And eventually it'll be discovered by more and more people. That's the idea that I had.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Um, so what are our next steps?
I would like to move the conversation into a kind of exercise of some way or other. We are now collecting stories, to use your word, the stories which seem to resonate with this vast thing that has to be defined. That is what is Upkido.
Yep.
And I'd like to move it into another way of cognition, if possible. Doing a brainstorm about it, doing a force to fit exercise about it.
Uh-huh.
Well, any kind of creative exercise that seems to make sense, so that we are then helping ourselves uh, get more ideas out to admire or reject.
Hmm. Um, cool. And I'm open to whatever methods you want. I'll think about that, and I'm open to whatever other methods you think we could try. So that'd be cool.
And also, we should think about when is the right time to try to bring someone else into the conversation.
Yes. And I'm having a feeling that um, when we post about this publicly a bit, we'll get some people who are knocking and saying, "Hey, hey, hey, this sounds cool. Can I play?" And that will be a good metric of who to invite in.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
think. And I'll mention it, so maybe another next step is let's figure out which of the things we were doing or recording we actually want to post publicly and post it to LinkedIn. Because in my mind, I'm brewing a post about Upketo.
Yeah, good.
Um, and I'd like to have the invite of what to do if you're interested. Like I'd like to that be natural and easily figured out for anybody who's interested.
Sounds like a good idea.
Which brings me to a collateral issue, but Pete pinged me and he's possibly interested in closing down the Mattermost server. Do you use the Mattermost server
Oh,
much?
uh, not actively, but I do use it for reference. Yeah.
So this is the issue is that it's not very active and it takes some overhead on his part and it's all volunteer labor. Well, I'm not paying him a thing for hosting it for OGM. He hosts a couple other communities who also aren't that active on it. So he sent me a note a week ago that said, "Hey, I'm thinking of shutting it down," and that got me thinking about where do I invite people to have a conversation? Is it a private LinkedIn group? Is it a WhatsApp group? WhatsApp maintaining a WhatsApp group is one person's nightmare, I think.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
But my
yeah.
old answer was I would always start a Google group for stuff, and I'm very comfortable adding and subtracting people from Google groups. And right now, the OGM Google group is the only one that I have to worry about that for. But Google groups aren't terrific. I just really don't know. Like if somebody said, "Okay, great, let's keep talking about this Upketo thing," where should we do that? So maybe we should both ponder that for next week, for our next
Yeah.
call. Yeah,
Excellent idea. Let me just
yeah. Because it would be nice if we sort of open this a little bit more publicly. It'd be really, really nice to have the challenge for people to do some Upketo and post their response to us, and also how to join a regular conversation. And that doesn't need to mean there's a difference to me between, hey, we're going to have a weekly Upketo call now forever, and I just backed out of most of my weekly forever, commitments. I don't really want to do that, but I would like, and if it were on Mattermost, I'd start a new channel for Upketo and I'd say, join us here. And I check Mattermost regularly. It's a part of my daily routine, my daily sweep to see what's new on Mattermost. So I'm sad that it might go away. I'm not that big a fan of Slack. And then Pete was saying Discord has gotten a lot of traction. I don't really know how to use Discord, and all the Discord communities I'm in, I'm not that happy with.
Yeah,
So I don't really know that Discord's the place I want to do it. So I'm mixed.
yeah, 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 yeah. I couldn't imagine doing it in WhatsApp group.
Yeah. I'm in a couple of WhatsApp groups that are reasonably functional, but they're not very big.
Yeah,
They're not very big. And I think we need something that scales a bit better than WhatsApp.
yeah. I'm in a couple of groups with 15 or 20 people, and there's too much stuff posted which is relevant to two or three people and
Yep.
not relevant to me or the last post or things like
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, I mean, I don't have all that much experience with Mattermost. I rather liked it, but
Yeah,
it does
I
take
like it. I
like
like it a
people.
bunch. Yeah,
Yeah,
but you would vote
that's
against WhatsApp, so that's
to do
interesting.
it.
What about a private LinkedIn group?
Never had one. Willing to
Um,
try.
yeah, they exist. I don't think the problem for me is the evidence is bad because I don't think I'm a member of a private LinkedIn group that is thriving, that has an interesting conversation going. I've been invited into several LinkedIn groups that are so big. There's an L&D LinkedIn community, learning and development, basically corporate L&D. And I took one look in there and I'm like, wow. And I got invited in and I just swam around for a little bit and felt like I was drowning and left because it wasn't exactly my jam. And I didn't really know where to connect. I didn't have the time to read enough to feel like I could jump in. So I don't have a great experience of those kinds of things, but everybody's kind of on LinkedIn. So that's not one of the things we want to avoid is causing people to have to install any new software.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely
Yeah.
agree. Probably LinkedIn is as good a place as any to start because
Yep.
it's more or less intuitive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's on most people's daily rounds, kind of.
Yeah.
All right, so that not hard to do, by the way. Very, very easy to do. So I can go try to prototype one and invite you to it and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. Let's try that. About next week, I'm
Yep.
not 100% sure I can make our time because as I think I told you originally we were going to be this week
House
on
sitting.
vacation in our own city, but
Yep.
it's looking like it's going to be next week. And that's the first evening of being there, which would probably mean we won't know what we're going to do in the late afternoon and evening until we get there.
Yep.
And I probably wouldn't want to try to compel Jose and I to be in a place to have this hour conversation, unless it
Hmm.
actually works out. But so let's certainly think about the last 3 weeks of September and leave it a bit in the air. Uh,
Why don't you just pay attention to whether and when you might have time for a call next week, and I
yeah,
will like just leave it in the air, and that'll be fine.
yeah, because I do like the momentum that we're
Yeah.
looking to build it with this.
Cool.
And yeah, between now and at least next Tuesday, maybe it'll become next Monday or next Wednesday. Think of something that would be fun to do, which moves us into another way of thinking.
A different mode. I like that.
Yeah, exactly, another kind of intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of intelligence, I really did like the suggestion you made last week about those what if scenarios, asking ChatGPT, Claude, and another to try out silicon intelligence on it.
Mm-hmm. It'd be cool.
Yeah, I do really think so.
Well, good. One of us should try it.
Okay, great. Let's leave it at that for now, and I'll wish you a happy and insightful week and back to good health.
Thank you very much. I think in the next couple days, April and I are in the clear, but yeah, it's been ugly.
Yeah. Well, the future will only get better.
Exactly.
Exactly. I can laugh at myself saying that. Okay, Jerry.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Hank. Good night.